Good morning, Gamecock fans. Welcome into coffee. JC Shurburtt here with you. Thanks for joining me this morning. Today is Friday, March 28th, the year of our Lord 2025. Apologies for no episode yesterday. Had something come up. That happens from time to time, but right back in the saddle today. Was right back in the saddle with the show yesterday afternoon. And good to be with you. It's really good. I love this time of year to a certain extent. I think with the baseball team having the struggles they are, it's dulled my sparkle a bit. I don't know. Do I have a sparkle? I'm not sure that's the right word right here. My wife says that dulls her sparkle. So, when you live with somebody for about 6 years, you kind of start talking like them. So my sparkle is a little dulled, but it's a good day for Gamecock sports. Obviously, sometimes win or lose, it's just good to have your team playing, especially, this time of year, spring football going on. You've got transfer portal, basketball. They had a couple of visitors on campus yesterday. You've got, and that's the men's side. The women play today at 5 against the University of Maryland Terrapins over in Birmingham. The winner will play the winner of Duke and North Carolina. I'm assuming that's a rivalry, 8 miles away, and they have to go to Birmingham to play. But that's good. On the BigSpur.com, Joe Machika and Ryan Bethay are out there covering it. So if you're a women's basketball fan, please check out the coverage. Even if you're not a member, some of it's free to read, and you can always read the message board. It's a freemium message board. You have to be a member to post, and some posts are VIP, but a lot of them are free. So you can go browse that. The game action comments. It's kind of entertaining at times. And that's on thebigspur.com on the 24/7 Sports Network. But Gamecocks trying to get to another Final Four back in Tampa. The first one they ever went to in 2015 under Dawn Staley was in Tampa. Lost a heartbreaker, tough one. I think 1 point to Notre Dame down there in the Final Four round. But South Carolina chugging right along in the NCAA women's basketball tournament. Softball continues to win. They had a big midweek win over the Clemson Tigers. Now they play the LSU Tigers in Baton Rouge. LSU's number 3 in the country. That most of the SEC teams are ranked pretty high, so it's no big deal. Carolina's 10th, so top 10 battle in Baton Rouge. And then at 7, first pitch at Founders Park, number 1 Tennessee Volunteers come to town to take on the Gamecocks. I think we've kind of been expecting a pretty big road crowd from UT with this one, since South Carolina's not a bad drive, but their men's basketball team plays tonight against Kentucky. That's a huge game. It's up in Indianapolis. I think the legions of Vol fans in orange will travel. I know Kentucky will travel. As someone that drives to South Carolina, at least 2 or 3 times a year, I go right through Indianapolis, right through Lexington, and right through Knoxville. And trust me, if that was the only part of that drive I had to make, I'd be just fine with it. But it's not a bad haul up to Indy. And it's interesting because Purdue is playing at Indy as well, and that's really close. I go through West Lafayette too. It's a garden spot, right? But anyway, so that's the setup tonight. So I don't know if that would affect road trip plans for baseball. I know there's a lot of Vols in South Carolina. You'll be able to tell because that orange sure stands out when you're watching. When you got the seats that are garnet, it's kind of a eyesore. But we'll see. Jake McCoy takes the mound tonight. I don't like the matchup. Obviously, Jake's given up some runs lately, but he's got good stuff, and you never know. Pitcher gets hot. You can win the game. Tennessee did drop their opening game to Alabama in a series last week. So if Gamecocks can just steal one this weekend, I think that's a good time against this bunch. They've really built a monster in Knoxville. And we'll talk with John Whittle on the show, Inside the Gamecocks, the show later today. Right out the top, he's going to kind of set the scene for the series. Whittle comes in on Mondays on the morning show, and then we get him on Fridays for 15 minutes or so because there's so much news, and then there's a midweek game to talk about and stuff. when you talk about previewing the series. Stuart Lake will be in with Jamie Bradford later today on the morning show. That's always, if you're a big baseball fan, that's a great conversation. I mean, those two are the best in the business, and along with Whittle at breaking things down, telling you why things are like they are and how to fix them or how they could go bad if things are going well. It's a straight shooting hour and a great discussion. So be sure to check that out. So lots going on in Gamecock land. I, uh, I like that term to say Gamecock land, but it doesn't look good written. It's like the L and the K are kind of, I don't know. Crazy me, right? So I mentioned the basketball visitors from the transfer portal. I'll just run down these guys real quick. Providence, big man, Chris Esondoko. I'm going to say Chris. It's spelled Christ. He's French, so I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce the first name, which is spelled like an English name, right? And then Esondoko obviously is not, but I think it's Esondoko or Isondoko. This guy's 7 foot tall, 7 feet tall, 290 pounds. That's huge. That's a big guy. Stats won't blow you away, but obviously there's some things they like about him. He originally, if he ended up at Carolina or wherever he ends up, it'll be his third school in 3 years. St. Joseph's was the first place he was at. And then Towson wing Christian May. Yeah, he is a 6'5", small forward wing type. Stats again won't blow you away. Pretty good rebounder for his size. Actually played against Carolina at 10 points and 8 boards as Towson lost to the Gamecocks 80-54 earlier this year. Esondoko, back to his stats: 22 games played, 14.9 minutes per game, 4.3 points, 3.9 rebounds. May was 7.6 points, 4.3 boards, averaged 27 and a half minutes, and hit 31% from behind the arc. May has 1 year. Esondoko has 2. So we'll see what happens. See what happens there with those two individuals. I'm sure there's going to be more. In fact, I can guarantee it. So those are just the tip of the iceberg. And in recruiting with the transfer portal, don't just assume the first guys they bring in are the priority guys. Most of the time, it's just like football. Most of the time, these schedules, we say these visits happen on the schedule that the players have or whoever's kind of organizing it. So of the two, I'm intrigued by the big man the most, because 7 foot 290, you can't coach that. I don't know, I don't know about the production and what exactly went on at Providence. I know Providence was not that great this year, but the team results don't always matter, when you're talking about that. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with the basketball transfer portal moving forward. So now to football. Spring practice rolls on. And what I was going to talk to you about today with football was the passing game in general. So I guess it was lost on me, or maybe I didn't look at the stats, but I was reading an article about, Carolina's offense, or Carolina's team. It was on ESPN.com. I think it was the returning strengths and weaknesses of every top 10 team. And it's kind of good because you get a glimpse this offseason from ESPN about Carolina just about every time they write one of these lists, because the Gamecocks are 10th and they're way too early top 25. And they just go through their way too early top 25 and talk about every team based on a subject. So that's good for consumption when we're consuming content this off season, because your team's mentioned every single time. So there's kind of some topics to talk about, and it's been really nice. Do I agree? No. I looked at the strengths and weaknesses coming back. The strength was the front seven, and I'm like, I don't know that I'd go that far. Maybe it will become a strength anytime you have Dylan Stewart in the mix. That's good, but of the front seven, if you're just kind of looking at who's back, there is nobody except Dylan. I mean, so I don't know. Now there's confidence around the program that the front seven will be good. Lots of confidence, even maybe more confident than you or I are out here. They believe they're going to replace what they lost, and that the front seven will be good. And I think there's some I guess logic there. I think I've mentioned the linebackers many times. I mean that they're players to be excited about in that room, and that's part of the front seven, obviously. I like defensive end. I think Carolina's got another strong group. Defensive tackle, I believe it will be fine. I know that some of you out there maybe don't are a little nervous about it. And trust me, I'm nervous about every position. So it's not. I'm not dismissing your concerns, but I do believe that Carolina's going to end up with enough there to be very competitive. It's hard to replace four seniors, really your top four guys at a spot like that. But they have a mix. They have some good young players. They have older players like Goodwine and Nick Barrett, who, as I predicted, and as Hale McGranahan talked about yesterday, those are the first two guys to go out for spring ball. They always have to have – you always have a top 11, when you head into practice. That changes quite a bit. But it's usually guys that are familiar with everything, that know what to do, because you're running drills. And you don't want to put somebody out there in the drill first, because sometimes you're trying to give a look for the offense, and so you line up your guys on defense that know what to do and where to go. I don't believe Nick Barrett and Monkel Goodwine will end up being the starting 2D tackles, but I do think that that's where that's a starting point, right? Everybody's got a starting point. And so the strength in this article was the defensive front. The weakness was the interior of the offensive line, which you look at, and, South Carolina lost 3 starters, I believe. It's hard to upgrade Vershawn Lee and Torricelli Simpkins. Those guys were very good, and Torricelli's probably going to get drafted. Although some of these mock drafts are coming back with like 6 players, I can't imagine somebody like Rocket Sanders or Josh Simon not getting drafted. And they're the ones, when you see McShay and those guys with their top players by position, that aren't even listed. But, I think Simpkins will get drafted. Lee has a chance to catch on as an undrafted free agent, could get drafted. So when you look at it from that standpoint, yeah, I could see it. And the stat that was pointed out in the article, which brings me to my next point, my main point here, was that South Carolina was 4th in the SEC in rushing last season. I guess that got lost on me. I didn't look at the stats. That's impressive. I think anytime you can finish a top 5 in rushing in the SEC, you're doing pretty good things offensively. And even Clayton White, Carolina's defensive coordinator, mentioned in a press conference last week that the offense did a really good job running the ball. And statistically, they did. There were some games where it didn't feel like it. Oklahoma comes to mind. There were some not so flattering stat lines, I would guess, as far as the run game goes. But same thing can be said about the pass game in general. But so Carolina's 4th in the SEC in rushing last year, and you would hope, with the ability of Sellers to move the ball, run the ball. We talked yesterday about, I think, on the crossover between the morning show and the show, how people are excited about the running back room. Maybe that was Jamie and Mike, and I'm just I'm forgetting about it. But there's some players in that running back room. And as far as the interior offensive line goes, I don't agree that you chalk that up as a weakness. I think that when you look at Tree sliding inside, there's a guy last year that many players on the team knew he's redshirting, but felt he was the best offensive lineman they had. And he seems to have embraced it. So, you got the competition at center between Boaz Stanley, and Rodney Newsome. Those are 2 transfer portal guys who are pretty well regarded. So you're basically replacing your right guard, and that's probably going to come down to Trovon Ball, who started his whole freshman year. He's 337 pounds, or Nick Sharp at 340, or somebody like that. So that's really one open spot. So I didn't necessarily agree that that was the weakness of the team. I would look around and probably pick another position. And I don't know about weakness right now. Probably question mark would be the bigger thing. But there are question marks every year on every team. And those questions end up getting answered one way or the other. It's either good or bad. It's either as we expected, our concerns are valid, or they're not. That's just how it goes at every position every year. Normally, and there's been a lot of years around here where there's a big concern, and then that concern really isn't, all that damaging when it comes to the season. And there are people out there that believe they're shocked South Carolina's probably not going to target a portal wide receiver unless there's just somebody that they can't pass up. Mike Fury talked about that in his media availability this past week, and they're kind of happy with what they got, which brings me to this, the passing game. Okay, South Carolina's passing game was not bad last year. And if you kind of consider that the receivers were in and out of the lineup with injuries, a guy like Jared Brown just could not get going. Mazeo Bennett as a true freshman, I think once he kind of got injured against A&M, he sort of hit a freshman wall, which happens. It's kind of funny because Nick Harbor had a really good game at A&M last year, and then he hit a wall. So maybe there's such a thing as a freshman wall to a certain extent with some of these guys. But it was really, because it was Mazeo, and then for a while it was Jared, Gage Larvadan, and Delvon Campbell, who only had 1 year, certainly made their share of plays. There was not a wide receiver one on this roster, really. I mean, Harbor led the team, receiving room and receiving yards, and Mazeo led them in catches. So it was kind of a work in progress, a very scattershot room last year, and those guys are obviously important in your passing game. But for LaNorris to throw for the yards he did and had the touchdown to interception ratio he did, and Josh Simon really helped out in a big way. And you could use a guy like Josh Simon in a lot of different manners at tight end. I think satisfactory would be the grade for the passing game. But Carolina was 9-4 and missed the college football playoff, and probably was a couple plays away from having a really special season, not only going to the playoff, but going to Atlanta and playing for the SEC championship, which has happened once in however many years Carolina's been in there. I guess this will be their 2025 will be their 34th season in the Southeastern Conference. It's hard to think that, guys, because there's people still around that remember the ACC days. Heck, I mean, I was not alive until 76, so they had been gone from the ACC. But my whole life growing up, everybody talked about it and how they wish they hadn't left, all that good stuff. And if Carolina had not left the ACC in 70, 71, then things would probably be different. I don't know if the football program would have the runway and upside that it does. I don't know if they'd ever gotten Steve Spurrier and Lou Holtz to coach here. Those guys wanted a challenge, and the SEC certainly is a challenge. Just kind of looking at it, I think Carolina's in a good spot. But my whole life, all you heard about was ACC, ACC, ACC. And then, Carolina was only in that league for 18 years. It's been 34 years, Southeastern Conference now. That's a long time. And also means I'm getting older, which is sad. I don't know. I'm 48's not that old. But I feel 48 much more than I felt 42, if that means anything to any of you Gen Xers out there. So, the bottom line is Carolina, missed out. And I think one of the keys to next season to take that next step, and this is for LaNorris Sellers and for the offense in general, is to develop a passing game that teams have to really go into a game worried about and account for. Some teams didn't. And like with Missouri, I think it burned them because they came in, they're going to stop Rocket, you're going to stop LaNorris, going to stop the run. Did a pretty good job of that. But at the end of the day, Sellers, his Houdini acts and passing down the field did them in 353 yards, that was a good day throwing the ball. But Carolina didn't always have that, and that needs to change. And so part of the way you change it is through having better production and more weapons at wide receiver. And you look and you get the comments from Fury. Seems I've never seen an assistant coach be that positive and fired up after one day in pads and spring practice about his position. I don't think he's a sunshine man or anything like that. I just think he looks at this group and sees improvement from last year. And last year wasn't too shabby. I mean, he did a good job coaching, I felt, with all the constant changes, guys up, guys down. It's hard to get into a rhythm. Playing receiver, passing game's a lot about rhythm. Man, it's about getting in there and having it be second nature, whether that's route running, catching the ball, getting in sync with your quarterback. That's all really, really important when it comes to the passing game. And that was hard to do that last season with guys being in and out of the lineup. So, you mentioned Jared Brown, Nick Harbor, and Mazeo Bennett. I think that those three certainly are capable. He mentioned Vandrevius Jacobs returning, and they started talking about his freshman. So when you look at Bennett specifically, and we've discussed him here on Coffee and on the show before, I think, one of the things Fury said, and you hear this about Mazeo, he is a dedicated, hardcore, give me the ball, competitive kid. And he always has been. You look at his career at Greenville High School, he was a guy that would go up and get it, make crazy good catches, loves South Carolina, loves football, a competitor. I've compared him often to the late, great Kenny McKinley, and I think style-wise, that's kind of who he is. Quick feet, slippery, will become a good route runner. And Fury even mentioned that he's running routes now that he couldn't do last year. That's hard. Route running's hard. It's also very important, especially when you're talking about a major college passing game and a new quarterback last year and all that. So you got a true freshman, new quarterback. I think this guy can become Steady Eddie out there for Carolina. Just a guy that you can go to that'll catch passes, that's productive. I look for his production to jump next season. And I think this guy, Mazio's one that maybe people don't talk about enough, even though he, you look at his freshman year production wise and you say, well, he can build on that, right? If you look at what he did and what he can do, there's probably a reason to be excited. But when you got 6 new players coming in that are all highly touted to a certain extent, and you look at those guys and then you look at who's back, it's kind of, I guess, fun to dream about the newcomers and talk about them more the offseason, because in the offseason we talk roster. But Mazio's probably being slept on a little bit. So I'm going to go out and say I think his production will jump, and he'll be kind of Mr. Reliable out there. We've talked Nick Harbor, and I think that certainly the talk is he's improved. The question will be with him, as always, how much? What are we going to see out of him? Mike Fury mentioned that he probably felt himself, Nick did, that expectations were too high. And I agree. And that's not anybody's fault. I'm not blaming fans or media or anybody for putting high expectations on him. Because again, it's fun to dream. 6'5", 230 runs, fast. It's you're like, goodness gracious, what a freak athlete. We talked about freak athletes earlier this week, and he's definitely one of them. But for football, there was going to be a long runway for him. There was going to be development, growing pains. And I think he's done a daggone good job so far of just doing the number one job of a receiver, catching the ball. We talk about his hands, and he does look like he fights it. But the bottom line is he catches it. He catches the football. And that's job number one. So right now, and I've said this before, he's a possession receiver, essentially. You got to get the yards after catch and all that stuff kind of up. So he's there. I'm excited to hear that Jacobs is doing better. Honestly, he's a guy that, again, had some injuries last year. I thought he got really good at catching the slant. And of course, a common complaint was They don't throw it over the middle, don't throw the slant. And they didn't. I don't know if that's a complaint or not, but he was good at catching that and he gets hurt. And oh well, there's that. He was close earlier in the season too to breaking a couple. Old Dominion, he had open field and all that, but he's going to be more comfortable. Jared Brown's very explosive athlete. Mike talked about him. Mike Fury talked about him becoming more of a complete receiver because he was kind of a gadget guy at Coastal. And he was kind of a Deebo Samuel type. I'm not comparing him. I'm not saying he's as good as Deebo. Long way to go for that. But as far as like, the 49ers and I guess the Washington Commanders now will pitch the ball to Deebo and treat him kind of like a running back. That's what he did at Coastal. Lots of end arounds. And Carolina ran some end arounds to him with success. I mean, he's good at that. But becoming more of a complete receiver, it seems like he has. A lot of folks are really excited about him. And then you have the freshmen. And so we knew Brian Rowe looked really good in the bowl practices. And we knew Malik Clark has got a ton of upside. And you know about Jordan Gidron, who's a year removed from being a sophomore in high school, who's got the body type and the speed. And Pup Sellers, LaNorris's brother, Jaden, had a really, really good senior year. I mean, it was sort of legendary what he did at South Florence, getting them winning the state championship for them this year. And so that was, he's a really good player. And then there was Lex Cyrus, who they won a recruiting battle for out of Harrisburg, PA, beat Penn State on him. And you heard about him. You heard about the speed. Darren Usher was on with us a while back and talked about him running the heck out of the 100-meter dash. 10-2, 10-3. That's fast. I knew he's fast, but I didn't know he could jump like Brian Rowe, 41.5-inch vertical. That's a school record. And so now you start talking about in terms of, the skinnier guys, Rowe and Sellers and Cyrus. They all got to bulk up. Carolina's got a pretty good strength staff, nutrition staff to do that. Anytime you have a receiver that's, not 6'4", that's about 5'11", 6 feet tall, that can jump up and get it, that's very beneficial. So who plays as a freshman, who doesn't play as a freshman? I didn't even mention Donovan Murph, who's coming in. They think he's definitely getting in the lineup because he's already 185, 190 pounds, physically ready to go, not skinny. And keep in mind with the skinnier guys, it's not necessarily about not being skinny. It's about strength. Sometimes those guys, their body's still maturing, filling out. And in the SEC, and really with whoever you play, starting with Virginia Tech, they're going to try to jam you at the line of scrimmage. And you have to get off that press coverage. So that's going to be the key for all the smaller, younger guys is get off press coverage. Because if you can't, you're not going to get down the field. And, I mean, it's over. It's over before it starts, right? So I think that's a big key for those guys. And so I don't know how it's going to play out. A lot depends on this, that, and the other. Just because Lex Cyrus jumped 41.5 inches, right? That doesn't mean he's going to go in and play. That's a testing metric. But I do think that's a great sign because you're talking about big time athleticism, explosiveness, ability to go up and get it. The speed's there, the hands are there. You hope. I'm not guaranteeing there's no drops this year. Don't hold me to that. But I do think it's a good group. So what happens, and you look at South Carolina in general, and I think, right now with Sellers, Carolina and the backs, Carolina's going to still try to run the football. And I think that's going to be a part of Beamer's program for forever. If you look at his dad's program at Virginia Tech, or you look at Oklahoma under Lincoln Riley, or Kirby Smart at Georgia, anybody he's worked for, Georgia, going back to George O'Leary and Philip Fulmer when he's a graduate assistant at Georgia Tech and at Tennessee, those teams always ran the football. South Carolina, when he was here under Spurrier, they ran the football. They at least tried. 07, 08, 09, they were just okay. 2010, when Marcus came in, they could really run it. And so he understands that. That's always going to be a part of his offensive philosophy, so to speak. And with Mike Shula, I think he's made steps that we've gone over to get the run game going. But I also think when you look down the road with these receivers that they've recruited, with who they can go get in recruiting moving forward, you know, after Sellers, after Sellers, you're looking at a team that'll be able to throw it pretty well. I think this coming year, I'm willing to go this far. The passing game is going to take a jump, make a jump. I think too, having both tackles back from a protection standpoint will help. I think Mike Shula can identify some of the issues in protection they have last year, set those guys up better. And with depending on who wins the other guard spot, teams are going to really not be able to all the time. It's not that one won't get past you, but just shoot pressure up the middle and flush Sellers out the pocket. Now, that didn't work to their advantage sometimes because he would just scramble out and make a play with his feet or whatever. But I think Carolina's going to have a little bit more of an ability to protect the passer. I thought the pass protection in the bowl game was really good, but Illinois didn't play them like Clemson. Clemson came after LaNorris. I mean, that was old school Brent Venables, Wes Godwin style defense from Clemson. They just, hey, we're just going to come after him. And they got burnt doing it. But I also think to a certain extent it disrupted the passing attack that day. I mean, the passing game wasn't super duper. But LaNorris Sellers is accurate. He is a good thrower of the football. Statistically, it plays out that way. I think those numbers, completion percentage will go up. And having weapons, I think makes a difference. And South Carolina's going to be young at receiver when you talk about in general, but they do have those 4 veterans that all have improved and all have a shot. And the last thing I'm going to tell you that Mike Fury said, he said that the freshmen are pushing them. And competition helps. Competition makes everybody better. So as far as how it'll turn out, I don't, who knows who will start. But I'm willing to go as far as to say I think Mazio Bennett will be Mr. Steady there and will play a bigger factor as far as catches and stats and things like that maybe we think or people are talking about right now. And then the tight end room, Michael Smith is kind of out with an injury situation right now. They're missing him. But I think Jordan Dingle coming in for Kentucky is ready for one last run. I think he's a really good player, especially in the passing game. Like I said before, he always scared me whenever Kentucky played Carolina, but they never seem to use him. They'll use him in this offense, trust me. Michael Smith, of course, is a freak. And then you got Brady Hunt, and you also have Maurice Brown, who can catch passes. And so that's going to be a pretty good. I'm not concerned about the tight end position right now. Are you going to have a guy that catches as many passes as Josh Simon? Probably not. But you still have talent, like a lot of talent there. And those guys can be used in different ways and all that good stuff. Particularly excited to see what kind of step Brady Hunt makes. If he can get back, he coming back from injury and all that last year. He had some rotten luck on some fake kicks, right? Last year would have gotten him a couple more touchdowns, but I thought he was really coming into his own, maybe saved the day against Missouri, but I thought he really came into his own last year. So passing attack wise, Carolina could take a step forward. I think that only helps because if you have a formidable passing attack, defensive coordinators have to pick their poison when they play a team that can do everything, and you're sitting there going, well, we're going to try to stop Sellers from running it and stop their backs. Okay, good. Well, they're going to just throw it all over you. And that's where you want to go. And then I think moving forward, after Sellers down the road, Carolina's going to become a pretty formidable passing team as long as these guys pan out. Right now, looks like they're panning out, but we're not that far in to their tenures. But it's enough to be excited about, I think. Excitement is contagious, and when the position coach is that exciting and really tells you specifics. He didn't just get out there like, hey, I'm fired up and tell you nothing. I mean, he was like, well, this is why, and this is why, and this is why. Really enjoyed that interview, by the way. I've seen a million of those assistant coach interviews through the years. I like to watch them. It gives you insight. You pick up little nuggets. But that one That one was a gold star. Assistant coach interview. So passing game, I'd love to hear your comments in the comment section here on YouTube. If you're watching here on YouTube, Chief Sports South Carolina. If not, if you're on podcast, send us an email, insidethegamecocks@gmail.com. Want to hear your thoughts on the Gamecock passing game outlook for 2025. Spring game won't be too far away, folks. I think 3 weeks. 18th, so today's the 28th, so the 18th of April. Get to see some of this stuff for real. Get to see a lot of players you won't see in the season. Get to see a lot of young players. I'm certainly looking forward to watching the spring game this year, though. I hope baseball turns it around, and women's basketball wins another national title, and softball continues to do like they do. I'm certainly not downplaying my desire for those teams to do well. And then the men's basketball portal, man, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well in the comments. But hopefully that's critical to get that thing back up and running. And that I feel like they've got a good plan, and I'm curious to see who else they target and bring in as the madness. The March Madness this year is not just on the court. And you hear a ton of coaches complain about it. The portal's already open. I can't believe this, blah, 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 blah. So they're griping. Nobody's happy these days, especially in the coaching industry. And I have empathy for them, but then I realize how much money they make. And I'm like, well, can't you just adjust a little bit? I mean, and I feel the complaints. I agree with them. I agree. It's why would you open the portal during the NCAA tournament? And I know from covering recruiting and having a business that used to rely heavily on recruiting, that the portal sucked the oxygen out of a really good recruiting class. People aren't really even as excited about signing day. And you talk to people at 24/7 Sports, it's the same thing. Portal does tons of traffic, and recruiting not so much anymore from the traditional ranks. It still draws a crowd, don't get me wrong, but it's not what it used to be. So basketball transfer portal sucking the life out of the rest of the industry. All right. You guys know about Palmetto Golf and Belt. Don't have to remind you again, but go to palmettogolfing.com. They are a sponsor. Also, Encapsulate USA, use code JCM. $10 off your first order, free shipping over $60. And also GamecockCoffee.com. Let's get some money in the coffers. Did find out if you've ordered the coffee, it's on its way. It ships, I think, in 2 or 3 days. I talked to my guy down there, and what they had to do is get it in the system. It's this big company that manufactures and all that, get it set up. And then once that batch goes out, they'll all get sent out on demand. So we'll look forward to seeing or hearing from you that have ordered the coffee, GamecockCoffee.com. All right, don't forget the morning show and the show as we continue on. I'll be back Monday with more coffee. This has been JC Shurburtt. I'll let you soon.